Okay, Webster. Continuing as you give us this larger geopolitical breakdown, I agree with you. If you remember, one of the few predictions where you were wrong, and nobody's perfect, was you were sure they were going to attack Iran, what was it, 4 years ago? And I didn't believe they were from all my sources. But you've been right more times than I have been, and I agree with you this time, and that's why I'm worried. They clearly are saying they want to go into Iran. Israel's saying it. They're pre-positioning. What will the attack look like? It's now on the front burner. How do we stop it from happening? And on the larger scene, how will they precipitate it? Will it be a false flag? What type of false flag are you looking for?
Let me just backtrack now. The last time we had this active danger was 2006, 2007, which was the twilight of the neocon Cheney invisible government regime under the second Bush administration. And that was, of course, the rogue B-52 of August to September 2007 was the high point of that, after which the danger, because it had been blocked, right?
The missing cruise missiles.
That was blocked by forces inside the U.S. military and the intelligence community. And it meant
and Fox Fallon said no. I mean, that was the real end of it.
It went up the ladder, and then the answer came back no. And the no probably came from Robert Gates and the Pentagon by then. The Brzezinski guy put in with the idea that they were going to change the policy and get rid of the neocon approach to these things. When you had the National Intelligence Estimate of December 2007 saying, and it's worth stressing again today, there is no Iranian nuclear weapons program as of December 2007, that was a sign that inside the bureaucracy, the people who wanted the attack on Iran had lost out, and that the Brzezinski group coming in saying, we have better things in store for Iran. What they had in store, of course, was the color revolution that now seems to have fizzled, with the idea being if you could put in a U.S. puppet regime in Iran, it's possible that you could then use Iran against China by cutting off oil and against Russia by making trouble in the Caspian Sea and in Central Asia in general. So as soon as, I think by January 2008, I put out now that the attack on Iran was getting to be less and less likely. So that, and I think that has held true during 2008, 2009.
And now, currently, Iran is not making anything near fissile material. They asked France to enrich it for them so everybody would know it couldn't be used in a weapon system. They want to supply nuclear energy to the Middle East. They know that they can't count on oil, and they're told no, no, no.
Right, which is, of course, illegal. It's outrageous. It's a double standard, right? Pakistan has nuclear weapons. Israel has nuclear weapons. What is the singling out of Iran? It's contrary to international law, because in international law, everybody has to be equal, formally equal. There has to be complete reciprocity, no hypocrisy, no double standard.
And we go back to 53. It's been a Anglo-American British possession. They've always wanted it back.
Right. Now, just in terms of the war danger, a couple of things to cite. Ahmadinejad, in his speech, I guess yesterday or this morning even, says Israel wants war by spring, summer of this year. So that's Ahmadinejad. And General Ivashov, right, the former head of the Russian military, high official of the Russian Defense Ministry. I met him at Thierry Mason's Axis for Peace back in 2005. He says that the danger of an Israeli attack on Iran right now is greater than it ever was. And you've got Netanyahu in Moscow for 2 days trying to convince Russia, among other things, not to deliver this A-300 surface-to-air missile capability, which would make it not impossible, but much more difficult and much more expensive in terms of planes and pilots lost for anybody to attack certain key targets inside Iran. So all of this is coming together. In the middle of this, Hillary Clinton has made a speech, which I think is really a teachable moment. She says, and she repeated this 3 times yesterday. She's in the Gulf, right? She was in Qatar, I guess, and then she went on to Saudi Arabia. She's trying to organize the Saudis and their friends in the Gulf Cooperation Council to be part of what looks like
and we now have a Saudi minister agreeing that sanctions aren't enough. So Saudi Arabia, where the 15 hijackers came from, always wanting to attack other countries.
Well, I I think they fear Iran, and I think they've been cajoled and threatened maybe to go along with this. But here's what Hillary Clinton says is really bizarre. She says the big danger now is that Iran is getting to be a military dictatorship. I think that is correct, and that's been visible for the past 3, 4, 5 months, that it's no longer the mullahs, it's no longer the monarchy, it's no longer the theocratic Islamic Republic. But you look at Ahmadinejad, he's a general. He's a general with,
so it's a more scientific, disciplined, hardcore group.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that the U.S. hates the most. The funny thing about the U.S. policy is, in public they say that they're against Islamic fundamentalism, but in practice they support it.
Yeah, they love a bunch of people running around, mutilating their women, acting like fools. That's why they fund these brigades. But they're scared of what they are, a scientific military dictatorship with high-tech propaganda. They fear themselves in the mirror that they see in Iran.
Yeah, you look at Nasser in Egypt, they didn't like that. You look at the military government that preceded Saddam Hussein, the U.S. didn't like that. But now she comes out and says it. She says, we want sanctions against Iran to protect the Islamic Republic and the rule of the mullahs against the threat of the Revolutionary Guard, the Pasdaran, the military.
And that's clearly last summer's coup was really a bunch of the original revolutionaries the CIA clearly funded. Let's go back then, Webster. Let's go back in a snapshot. This is historical fact, but a lot of them don't know this. Explain to people what really happened in '79 and flying the kingpin in from Paris. Explain what that strategic Brzezinski model was really about.
Well, exactly. That's what Hillary Clinton has shown, that the U.S. policy is to support an Islamic fundamentalist theocracy in Iran. The U.S. has always been the main backer.
Look at who they put in Iraq. The women are now wearing the turbans. Yeah. It's now an Islamic republic.
And in other words, enforced backwardness and enforced self-isolation. 1979 is simply this. The Shah has two sides. The Shah is politically a monster, of course, because he's got the Sabak, he's got this awful Gestapo that goes around repressing people and so forth. A horrendous human rights situation. But on the other hand, he's building about $75 billion to $100 billion of dollars of those days in development projects. He's building steel mills, urban mass transit. He's building a whole nuclear industry. If the Shah's plans had been allowed to go through, Iran would have been a nuclear power in terms of nuclear energy and probably more, decades ago. Wouldn't have never been an issue. And as soon as Khomeini came in, he immediately shut down $75 to $80 billion of these development projects. Among other things, they took the cooling towers of nuclear reactors and tried to use them as silos to store grain in. So this was a tremendous step backward. The other thing about the Shah that the U.S. objected to a great deal was that he was making deals not with London and Washington, New York, but he was dealing with the Italians. He was the Italian civil engineering companies were building the city of, well, today it's called Bandar Khomeini, but it was Bandar Abbas in those days. And the Soviets and the Japanese and everybody else was a welcome partner in Iran. So the U.S. said, no, we will not allow these other countries to come in and develop Iran. We're going to enforce backwardness on Iran.
And so here comes the Muslim brigade they use against the U.S., they use against every other country, they use against the Serbs, they use them against the Russians. It's admittedly their creation, and Glenn Beck's saying we better give all our rights up or the radical Muslims will get us. And then meanwhile, Bush 3 years ago puts out a press release at whitehouse.gov admitting that they're using Wahhabist al-Qaeda groups to attack the Iranians. Meanwhile, the news says Iran is al-Qaeda when it's Shiite, the opposite group.
Yeah, it's an incredible mishmash, but the one constant that goes through it is Zbigniew Brzezinski said in 78, 79, Islamic fundamentalism is our great bulwark against Soviet communism, meaning against Russia. Today, Hillary Clinton says the role of the United States is to interfere in the internal affairs of Iran with these sanctions because we want to protect the mullah regime. We want to protect this domination, the theocracy, in effect.
What an incredible statement. She's saying... I mean,
letting the cat out of the bag in a very, very gross way. I mean, everybody in the world is noticing how bizarre is this. Now, she may be saying that to try to make it easier for the Saudis to get into a war with Iran, because she can say, you Saudis, don't worry, these are not fellow Muslims, even on paper. These are really military dictators. These are really communists or socialists or something like this, right? Like Saddam Hussein or Nasser or something like this. This is now the situation. So I would once again say the big shift is now we're back to the attack on Iran as a definite possibility in the short run. But now this is mainly against China, because if you're attacking Iran today, this is to cut off oil to China. Iran, I think, sends China about 11 or 12% of the oil that China imports. There are it's about $75-80 billion of development deals.
But